Call this council meeting to order. And at this time, if you're able, please rise for our national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of its command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Renee Bisson, thank you. Council, next we have our land acknowledgement, and we're going to move it through council. So this evening we have Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Niagara Region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I forget, please make sure all your devices are silenced. Appreciate that. Next, proclamations. There are none this evening. We have adoption of the agenda. Please note, Councillors, item 8.1 is amended to state the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. And item 8.7, proposed Lockgate illuminated marquee sign 2023-41 is a report that has been added. If I could have Councillors Bodner and Hoyle move that. Are there any questions with the agenda or changes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. At this time, I don't have any disclosures of interest, but are there any? Okay. Approval of the minutes, the regular meeting of Council, February 14th of 2023. Could I have Councillors Danch and Elliott move that? Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Under staff reports and correspondence items, only two items have been pulled, 8.1 and 8.2. Because 8.7 is new, does anybody want to pull that? Okay, Council, that's fine. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Baggio move the remainder of the items. All in favor? That's carried. That includes correspondence. Yes, Madam Clerk. No presentations. We don't have any delegations. We have item 12, Mayor's Report. We're already at the end of February, and it just seems like I just said we were already at the end of January. Tomorrow we welcome a new month, and March is always busy, and usually we get some warm days, so I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. First, I want to take a second to thank our city staff for their work during the ice storm last week. I know I did, I'm sure all of you did. We saw our crews out there working long hours to ensure our roads and sidewalks were safe for residents to travel on, and we really appreciate the great job they did. Steve, please pass that along to your staff on behalf of all of council. They were phenomenal. Thank you. And I did receive a number of comments. The best one, though, was from a person that lives in Niagara but does not live in Port Colborne, and glowing about how we do snow clearing in the city of Port Colborne. At our last council meeting, I provided a fairly long update about the changes coming to healthcare in Port Colborne. I want to reassure everyone that I continue to work closely with staff and council to make sure that Port Colborne residents have access to the quality health care that they need. Yesterday, I attended a roundtable meeting with Federal Economic Development Minister Philomena Tassi and our MP Vance Badaway to discuss healthcare challenges and funding in Port Colborne. We're hosted by the fantastic team at Bridges Community Health, who are delivering primary care in combination with health promotion and illness and prevention services. Tara-Lee McLean, Executive Director at Bridges, spoke at the roundtable about the Community Health Center model and their focus on community development and health promotion. She explained how vulnerable populations in Port Colborne receive much needed health care and assistance navigating the system. With the changes coming to the hospital system in Port Colborne, I appreciated the first-hand look at what other community-based services are available, especially for seniors, children and youth, newcomers to Canada, families or individuals with low incomes, and those experiencing homelessness. Equity and fairness in access to critical services like healthcare is very important, and I am committed to continuing to work with elected officials at the provincial level, our EMS partners, the team at Niagara Health, and other key stakeholders to ensure that residents of Port Colborne continue to have equitable and fair access to healthcare. Last Thursday, Niagara Region Council passed the 2023 budget, and this year was a particularly challenging budget for all councillors. As a member of the Regional Council, I was hoping we would be able to have a lower regional increase to the tax levy. However, I know that staff worked very hard to reduce it as much as possible with guidance from within our budget committee led by Mayor Redekop of Fort Erie. The 2023 regional budget includes a 7.58 increase to the levy with funding for 2 new ambulances that will ensure we continue to rely on our EMS services going forward. It also includes funding for major provincial projects such as the new hospital in Niagara Falls, which they're calling the South Niagara Hospital, and global inflation and lingering effects of the pandemic also contributed to this tax increase. This past Saturday, council and senior staff had a strategic planning workshop to discuss community issues, emerging trends and opportunities facing the city over the next several years. This overview generated a fulsome discussion about the strategic priorities that should be incorporated into a new strategic plan, which will be a living document that will guide this council, staff, and the community for the term of council. Council and staff also reviewed the preliminary results of the community survey, which was issued last month, and we received nearly 500 responses. I'd like to thank residents of Port Colborne and our key stakeholders who completed that survey. Your input matters. It's important to council that our strategic plan reflects community priorities and focuses on creating an exceptional small town experience in a big way. And staff have been directed to come back to council with a draft strategic plan this spring. This coming Thursday, senior staff and I will be participating in a roundtable discussion with Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Transportation and other public sector organizations, as well as business and industry partners, to discuss the province's proposed Ontario Marine Strategy. Port Colborne has been very active with this government and its government relations and advocacy strategy on this issue. And we look forward to continuing our discussions with the Ministry of Transportation as we move through and when they bring this forward to the legislature. But that doesn't end everything. At this time, I'd like to publicly thank, on behalf of this council, our clerk, or acting clerk, for the last year. Nicole Rubley stepped in, taking maternity leave, and it's gone pretty quick. Nicole, as well as Sima, who came in on another maternity leave as our acting deputy clerk. But Nicole led us through the recent municipal election, countless meetings, committees, and to be quite honest, Nicole has been a real joy to work with and has been very good within the city of Port Colborne. Nicole has taken a permanent clerk's position with the town of Wasaga Beach, so from one beach community to another, and quite frankly, they'll be lucky to get you. You know, we hate to see you go, but you know, you are taking on a permanent position, which is exactly what you've been asking for, and we've talked about this a number of times. So I'm sure you'll do us proud, and you'll enjoy your time at Wasaga Beach. So again, on behalf of the council, thank you. Just on a bit of sad news, our leader of strategic planning, economic development, tourism, Gary Long, excuse me, lost his father, Frederick Francis Long, who was the age of 77. He lived in Coburg. He was a teacher for 37 years, proud member of the Coburg Lions, Coburg Kinsmen, and a huge, huge Maple Leafs fan. So we just want to extend our condolences to Gary and his family, and wish our hopes and our prayers and thoughts are with him at this time. So thank you, Council. Any questions with regards to the Mayor's report? Councillor Baggy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You did mention you're going to have a meeting with the Minister of Transportation of Ontario, right?
Thursday, yes. P.A. Grewal is the leading the Ministry of Transportation on behalf of Minister Mulroney with regards to the Marine Initiative. So it'll be a round table. Myself and Mr. Cotton will be attending that virtually.
Just something you may be able to mention, and I know we've been having problems with the Ministry of Transportation to get our local city club signs put up on the highways. And this has been going on for 5 years. Past mayor actually started it, trying to get the signs back up, and every time I bring it up, it's the Ministry of Transportation. So maybe we can have a little talk with them or something.
Yeah, this meeting is strictly for the Marine Initiative, so I won't have time to ask that. However, we've had P.A. Grewal here. I do talk to him quite often, so I can talk to him about that. I'll also work with Steve and the departments in the ministry that he deals with, because I think signs are done by who, Steve?
So they are completed through the MTO within those right-of-ways that the club signs would be installed.
No, but who's the one that builds them for them and puts them on? Todd's? Is it still Todd's? Yes.
Correct.
It's still Todd's? Yeah, so I'll work with Steve on that, but yeah, I'll call P.A. Grewal separately about that, but because the roundtables are, this one in particular, like the last one we attended in person with the minister at that time, is strictly on the Marine Initiative. So don't worry, we will take that forward.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor, because the one on 58, I remember, I guess snowplow took it out, and former Mayor Maloney was trying to get one put in, but his term expired, and so
they were quick to move to increase our population on all the sides to 20,500, which is actually pretty good. But no, I think we spoke about that, and Steve may remember. I mean, he wasn't in the position he was now, but back to when I served as a councillor. I think we talked about that back then, guys, that were here. David, Frank, Ronnie. Yeah, so I'll put the bug in his ear, believe me. Because that's one thing we did talk about when we had him in Port Colborne. We had him down for almost a day. And we took them for a late lunch, early dinner, whatever you want to call it. One thing they did leave me with his staff was the fact that aside from the Marine Initiative and the other initiatives that we spoke about within the marine industry, within the canal, and our municipal marina promenade and things like that, they did say anything else comes up, please contact me. So that's a perfect example. So great, thanks. Anything
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Seeing that, regional councillor is not here this evening. Are there any regional councillor items? Okay. Staff, you want to start then?
Sure.
CAO.
Through your worship to council, I would just like to echo the mayor's sentiments about Nicole's impending departure. Obviously, that is a bittersweet thing that we're losing her a few months before she was supposed to end her time with Port Colborne, but that she's going on to a permanent position there. Nicole actually came into my office and I knew something was going on when she asked me to provide a reference for her, and it was my pleasure to do so because of the great experience that we've had working with her. And while we're anxious to get our staff back from their respective mat leaves, we are sad to see Nicole go, and thank her for the leadership that she provided during her time here. I also meant to apologize for my absence at the last council meeting due to illness, and I was able to watch the council meeting on YouTube, the video of the council meeting, and talk to staff about the various issues and make sure that we closed off our, or engaged in our to-do items. The last thing that I want to mention is this is a holdover from last fall that council will be aware of. We, you may be aware that we're dealing with the management of Shirkston Shores trailer park, resort, I guess, on two issues. One of them is some traffic that backed up onto Empire Road, onto the city road at high peak times and impeded traffic to businesses and homeowners who are trying to access their properties outside of the park gates because the lineup to get through the gate was so long and it was an unsafe situation. The second one is the continued access under an easement for residents of the hamlet, the Shirkston hamlet, that is everyone who has an LOS 1RO postal code. Tried to get a meeting in November. In fact, they had committed in August to a meeting with a group of staff and a group of a sort of nominees who are representing the residents, 3 homeowners in the area. And we met in August, talked about meeting in November, couldn't get Shirkston to provide availability for November. Tried for December, but again, on their end, there was availability issues. Tried again in January, didn't get together. I did get a meeting with staff only. The fire chief and I were able to meet with Shirkston management and talk about those 2 issues. We are encouraged, I should say, with their, probably the best choice of words, with the traffic plan that they've provided to mitigate these issues that occur at peak times going into the park so that residents and businesses can have access to their properties. We will monitor it. We will work closely with the police, bylaw, and fire to make sure that they hold up their end of the bargain. On the other issue, I reminded them of their commitment to meet with those 3 residents and the staff who are involved. They said that the ball's in their court. We're going to try to set something up through the city where we can all get around a table and talk about that continued access under the easement. So I will let council know the next steps of that particular initiative.
Great, thank you. Steve?
Through you, your worship, we have 2 items that we wanted to bring forward to council. In mid-December, we had a delegate present to council on concerns with the traffic and pedestrian safety surrounding Main Street and Elm Street. I want to let council know that we are actively working on this, but awaiting external comments before we can present points of improvement for the area. We have been in contact with the delegate, and she is satisfied that we are progressing with the progression that we've completed to date. So pending the external comments for submissions, staff are aiming for a late March to early April report to council on this item. The second item that we had was just an update regarding the closure of the pedestrian bridge at the H.H. Knoll Park. On February 16th, staff noted that the transition piece that spans from the bridge to the abutment had vertically separated. So we've since had a structural engineer review the bridge, and we're currently awaiting their report. The structural engineer did confirm that the bridge is not in any threat to collapse or further deteriorate in the immediate future, but repairs will be required to the bearing areas at both sides of the bridge. So we're currently waiting for a final scoping of the work to determine the next steps required. We'll be keeping the bridge closed at this time. It will keep both council and the public updated as the repairs progress.
Great, thank you, Mr. Szapowski. Chief? Mr. Bowles? Anyone else? No, I know. No other staff? Simon? Nicole, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank the City of Port Colborne residents. It's been an absolute pleasure serving everyone. Working under this leadership team, CAO Scott Louie, and the rest of the corporate leadership team has been a great learning experience, so welcoming, and all my peers in the clerk's department as well. I've been blessed this year, and this council. It has been so great with a forward-thinking council, and I know that you will pursue the next 4 years with the fortitude that you have so far. So thank you to the city, staff, and council. I appreciate it all.
Great. So no further remarks from staff. Councilor's remarks, I think I started on my right last meeting, did I not? I think I did. Councilor Bodnar, you're up.
Staff's taken care of everything I'm working on, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Hoyle.
Ditto on that.
Thank you. Councillor Danch?
I hate to be boring, but gonna miss you, Nicole. Thank you so much.
Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Director of Public Works, just one question. I had an inquiry from some residents and some photos sent. Do we have a policy on our maintenance for snow removal and accessible parking spots on the roads or on the city parkings that we've had? They were inferring about West Street in particular, because there's one on the north side of West Street that that was covered in snow that they sent me a picture of. So they just wanted to know if we had a policy on that.
Mr. Shapowski?
Yep, through your worship. So we do plow city-owned parking lots and parking lots that are adjacent to the roadway, angled parking in this circumstance. In certain circumstances, when we are out plowing during an event, there are vehicles that do park in parking stalls which limit the use, and then sometimes we have to actually circle back a couple times to make sure that vehicles are gone, or we work with bylaw to be able to ticket and tow those vehicles to be able to complete that. So in some circumstances, we do have to bypass certain areas of parking lot, especially within the West Street area for the angle parking. And then we circle back on the next shift, and we'll circle back again. I did drive by earlier today, just on my way here, and I did see that they were plowed down too, so we did get to that today as well. So in certain circumstances, there are delays in certain areas like that. It usually is limited to the vehicles that are within the area and the equipment that we have to be able to squeeze in between parking stalls.
Councillor?
Okay, thanks, Steve. Can we make it more of a priority? And just for the simple fact that people may have ambulatory devices that they need to get out of their cars, and even just simply getting out of your car and walking makes a huge difference to them. If we could just, you'd hate to say that we're going to give them special treatment, but at least give them the treatment that they need so that anybody that's using it can get out. And nothing that's going to cause problems, but just keep an eye on them so we can get to them a little bit quicker if we can.
Steve?
Yes, we could definitely do that. We'll look at utilizing maybe some different equipment, some smaller equipment to get out there. So we typically prioritize it by our priority roads, secondary roads, laneways, and then we'll start doing parking lots too. But sometimes those parking lots do fall in the mix of doing laneways at the same time too. So we can try to do a focus and just try to make sure that those areas are done a little sooner than now.
Thanks.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Just one through you to Steve. Steve, the repair that was done on the water main break on Main Street in front of Subway there, they patch paved it, and I think a lot of the settling has rightfully happened. But if you go through there, even at like regular speed, it's packed down enough. I think you could use another layer on top.
Yes, through your worship, we are aware of that, and we will be putting asphalt patch on top of that to be able to level and raise that area to make it more the drivability better.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Baggett?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll leave Steve alone, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, Nicole. You've been a great help to myself, even though it's my second term. You know the legislation off by heart. Like, you don't have to look up anything. You give me the answer right away, so I'm very, very impressed. And I did send an email to Wasaga Beach, told me you don't like sand. So maybe they'll revoke your employment. You can stay here. Second item, Mr. Mayor. I read in the Niagara this week, the last issue, Port Colborne High School is planning a 100th year anniversary event. And the principal, Mr. Paul Taylor, had an article in the paper asking for if any citizens at Port Colborne like to volunteer or help organize it. He'd be very, very grateful. So, Mr. Mayor, so anybody watching, I think most of us went to Port High except for the people who got bused to Welland. But the alumni of Port Colborne is very, very high, Mr. Mayor. And so just a little shout out to Port High.
Perfect. If it's anything like the 75th, it'll be something. Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship to the Director of Public Works.
a resident along Humboldt reached out to me recently and regarding flooding in the area, and just wondering what initiatives we're going to be residents in that area could be looking forward to seeing in the future.
Mr. Szpowski?
Yeah, through you, your worship. So currently we're working on the Clark area inflow and infiltration investigation and remediation program. So the Clark Street generally encompasses Janet Street, Clark Street, Humboldt, and Wellington. And what we're doing there is we're going to be doing door-to-door surveys between now and December to basically, it's approximately 700 homes, and we're looking for sump pumps, roof leaders, foundation drains that are incorrectly connected to the sanitary sewer. So we might be doing smoke or dye testing in the area to determine if some pumps are connected to the storm or sanitary sewer. And the main item there is to reduce the amount of inflow into the sewer system. So that would be focusing on the inflow and infiltration within the area. That they'll see results for there. We are looking at the potential for storm sewer work as well right now, and we will be applying for a grant that's coming forward too as well for storm sewer work within the general area. So that's something that we will be bringing to council next month.
And lastly, I'd just like to say thank you to you and Nicole for fixing that manhole issue there on Chippewa and Dolphin. So thank you for getting that getting there and doing it as quickly as you did. It was pretty urgent. And also, lastly, thank you, Nicole, for everything that you've done here. And good luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. Shirkston Community Center will be hosting their chili kickoff on March the 12th, and there's 3 judges, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bodner and Dan Aquilina will be the 3 judges. So hopefully a good turnout. Secondly, I'd like to thank Mr. Louis for the Shirkston update. LOS 1RO residents are very interested in this, so they're looking forward to future updates on that. And lastly, to Nicole, the fact that this was my first election and I knew nothing, you were very patient with me, and I thank you for that and answering all my probably ridiculous questions that I had, but wishing you all the best for your new endeavors in Wasaga Beach.
Thank you, Councillor. Great, thank you. That's it for Councillor's items. Okay, on to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. So item 8.1 is the 2023 Nickel Beach Parking and Related Operations Report. Recommendation that Corporate Services Department Report 2023-32 be received. And the Council approve the changes in beach rates proposed in Appendix B, and for staff to proceed with the construction of a new off-beach parking options at Nickel Beach as laid out in Appendix B. The Council approve a budget of $1.3 million to be funded from the Infrastructure Reserve to complete the Nickel Beach parking lot project, and that the updated Schedule G of the user fees and charges bylaw be included in a future amended bylaw 7047-8422. Is staff going to give us an update on this before we go to delegations? Mr. Bowles, or do you want to go to delegations and then questions from council?
To yourself, Mayor, I can go either way. I have kind of prepared about 7 or 8 question and answers for the public, just based on some email questions that have come in, and I know councillors have sent me in a couple questions, so I can go anyway.
Do you want to hear from our delegation first?
That sounds great.
Okay,
that
great.
Sounds great.
Thank you. So at this time, if I can call Mr. Sean Teeter, who's a resident of the city of Port Colborne, forward to the podium. Yeah, just press the red button. I'm just going to remind you of what the clerk went over. You've got a 10-minute time limit, so you can start now.
With all due respect, I'll be sitting
Oh yeah, that's no problem.
and I'll press the red button.
Thank you.
Cheating, right?
Hi, I'm Sean Tedder. I'm originally from Toronto. I've only lived in the Niagara region, I think, 6 years now. After my mom passed, I was looking for get out of the city in East York, and I really loved the Niagara region. The best part of Nickel Beach I loved was how accessible it is. 20-year-old dog that loves the beaches, loves your new beach as well, where you're moving to, Nicole. He's done the whole 7 kilometers or miles, and in his lifetime. And the reason I'm talking about that parking lot is I didn't even know there was the fellow frog situation as well, and I actually only came across this new company that basically was part of a business plan I was considering with Nickel Beach, because it's one of the most successful beaches other than where Nicole's moving. They, you have at least 150 cars come on the beach in the daytime, I hear, and we go to Cedar Bay Beach because that's where dogs are allowed on the private beach part as well. Most of the neighbors don't mind my dog walking along there as well. They know Stanley quite well. So basically, when I heard about the parking lot, I was wondering if there was going to be consideration for hydro, so that your plan of having EV chargers and other resources available, possibly for, I don't know how many spots are going to be there, but with 150 people normally coming down there on the drive-in beach, you would need, I guess, 150 spots if they're driving on as well and coming with families. And then the EV charger situation, I emailed all council at around 3 o'clock, and it's green earth, and Spanish it's excuse my Spanish, Virgio Geo for earth energy. So with Mr. Boyle's attention yesterday when I came in late, and Mr. Dance, and recently Mr. Elliott, and then this frog situation, I was combining the situation with all EV charger situations. They're going to ask me to go to committee and show them what this company can do for free as well, and also provide tokens revenue, because it's ex Honeywell company engineers, so they've created a binary token situation so that it can beat all the other networks. So they would line up and they won't have to phone anybody to figure out how to EV charge if it's Nickel Beach or if it's the marina, and so on, or the marketplace here across the road. And then when I found out about the frog, I thought we could use some signage down there, because I've only been here 3 years, but I'm very much environmentalist because of this green energy company as well. Green Earth is buying only green energy, solar power, and so on. And so I figured that we could get an understanding of the frog situation, because there is one sign on the Nickel Beach that says about the sand dunes, but it didn't mention anything about the frog. So, and I understand the frog hangs out in sand dunes. And so thank goodness for that, because you never know where he is. If you didn't know. I found out from a business person that same day, just going around to Valleys or around the corner on King Street. And it was quite an interesting day. And met a lot of dogs on the way too. So that's where Stanley comes in, my green energy guy, yeah. at 20 years old. So I don't know what the red light means, but if I'm going over time, I apologize. And I just wanted to mention that I really love to work because I was bringing in an EV chargeable car to work on that beach at around $20,000 and be a rental situation. And when I found out the beach condition, I changed the business model because it's called a mod, like bloke, a moke, M-O-K-E. The reason is the States is bringing down $7,500 on every car that goes below $30,000. If you remember, it was $50,000 for Canada with Justin Trudeau. So, and they're also bringing in free charges for everybody in the next month or so with their inflationary bill. So there's going to be an influx of cars brought, hopefully Canadian cars that are EV as well, that will help the States out as well, because there'll be 3 new Ford plants, EV alone. So it all gets down to environment again, because now I've heard about something and I want to know more about the environment around here because of that. And want to help the wind farms bring in, it's all around the environment.
Great.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I sent an email, you can read it later.
No problem. Council, any questions to the speaker? Seeing none, Mr. Teeter, thank you.
Thank you. Just call me Sean.
Sean, thank you. We also had one written delegation from Melissa Bigford, which I'm sure that's what Brian referred to earlier in regards to questions. Mr. Bowles, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Through yourself to council. You're correct. So there was another written delegation, and I've tried to outline a couple question and answers to go over a couple of those, and I've included a couple other questions that we've received through the customer service line today. So just to go over the report, I know council's had a chance to read it. One of the questions that came up was, why now? Why would we be moving off of the parking at Nickel Beach now? And the real answer is we don't necessarily have an answer to what the change in stance is at the ministry level. The ministry has told us without a doubt that the second that we park a car there, we will be in violation, and then we're going to have an issue. So that's what brings this report to council at this point in time. One of the other questions was why the change. The big issue, and we've noted that there was a couple situations or questions that came into staff today that was it an environmental issue or anything. And as noted in the report, the Fowler toad is an endangered species, and it's simply put that it's an endangered species, so we can't get into its habitat. Another question that came forward, were any of the protocols changed? Now, we've had a number of conversations with the ministry on the topic, and they've actually noted the city's been exceptional stewards over the years with respect to the beach and the toads. They're very happy with that. But at the end of the day, they did note that the gravel that we have just on the inside of the gate, you will note that the beach will actually have a sign up there for the next couple of days where you can't just walk on for the next 3 days because we'll be removing some of that gravel, that they do want that to be toad habitat. Another question that came forward was, will Splashtown still be there going forward? That came in on a couple different questions. People, I think, really like the Splashtown edition at Nickel Beach. And the answer is yes, we are still working with them to make it possible for them to be at the beach. Another question came up was, what about pedestrian safety when you go into the detailed appendix? Lot A specifically, it's about 400 meters from the beach. We've had a lot of talk internally from a staff perspective. The one thing we will note is that Nickel Beach is about 1 kilometer long, and we've actually had that situation where we've had cars moving and driving up and down the beach with people walking back and forth to washrooms and that. So many people that use the beach are used to that kind of flow, but realistically, we will be, and as we build out the beach operation plan, we do anticipate there will be a mechanism to prevent most of the car traffic from coming right up to the entrance to the closer lot unless you have a ticket or access to the closer lot in advance. That means most people will be parking in the Lot A, which is about a 400-meter walk to the beach. Another question that came up was, what about the adjacent residential area? We learned from a staff perspective, council was very interested in protecting that residential area and maintaining their current, mechanism of being able to park on the street. In the COVID period, we learned that. We learned that there was a number of people that were parking out in front of those residents, which is why right now we're highlighting to council. We look to come back and have a further conversation with council with respect to an updated parking bylaw, which will talk about how we can potentially use the participate pass, so that way individuals can still have will still have the ability to park in front of their home because others won't be able to. And that's a model that when we looked at other beach communities, a lot of other beach communities have a pass for those that live in the area to make sure that they still have a place to park in front of their home. A couple other just quick questions was that how that's a tight timeline. It is. We've expressed to the ministry just how difficult this will be. That's where tonight I'm thankful that the whole team is here. So not just our Director of Public Works, but we have our Manager of Infrastructure, our project manager for the project, Matt, as well as our Manager of Recreation. And I think online our Supervisor of Rec, Blair, is there. And as well as if we do have joint and safety committee discussions going forward, we do have our Manager of HR here as well. So that's a number of the questions we've received so far, and happy to take any questions from council.
Thanks, Brian. Just one quick one that just to pick up on, because I'm sure it'll come from councillors, but accessibility, what are our plans moving forward with regards to A, accessible parking, B, moving people with accessibility issues back and forth if it's from parking lot A or the closer one. And then I know we've used the beach mats and the larger big wheeled chairs in the past for those patrons that needed that. Is that plan being developed now, or do you already have one?
So it's a little bit of both. So we do have some of the beach mats already, and we will be including in this budget. We will pick up a couple of additional ones to be able to move people in. You will see there is in the appendix, I think it's referred to as Appendix C, there is an accessible lot that's going to be right at the front gate. What we do ultimately have in our plan is we just highlight to council that area is actually Valet's area. It's not our area. So the simple option is to make it gravel, but we have priced out in the budget to make it asphalt, and we are talking to Valet to see if we can accommodate that in the model, so that way it's very simple to move people in between. So I think that will help quite a bit with accessibility between the mats and be able to park right at the front door of the beach.
Great. So if I can have Councillors Bruno and Hoyle put this on the floor, I'll go to questions, and my list has been started by the Clerk's Department. Councillor Bruno is up.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the report. Certainly, Brian, before I get into my questions, one of the ones you alluded to, the ministry and the Fowler Toad. And I've got an inquiry, so I hope you could answer this in public. Many people think that, and this was a Fort Erie gentleman who works in Fort Erie, lives in Port Colborne, and he was involved in the issue down there with the Fowler Toad down at, I can't remember the beach area, fairly close to the Peace Bridge.
Waverly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. They did mitigation, and of course his answer was, why can't we mitigate instead of going right to this? So I'm just wondering for the camera and the public, could you indicate why this isn't a mitigatable issue with hours or evening or certain areas of the beach could be used?
So think through the mayor to the councillor, I think first of all, it's important is we have reached out, we've had a conversation with Fort Erie, and we're also using some of the same specialists at the city level as the town did when they were doing that, same with our biologist, to be able to do this review. But ultimately, the issue is that the car is driving onto the beach right into the habitat. And that's a little different than what I think they had just down the street in Fort Erie, where the cars are right in the habitat. And so the ministry has identified to us this isn't a situation where they're looking at a mitigation situation. We have to stop parking on the beach.
Okay. Thank you for that. One of the things before I get into the body of the report that I thought of is if you listen to what people are concerned about in some of the letters and people that have contacted me is, is this going to devastate things because of the issue of parking and lugging your beach gear to the beach from one of those parking lots. And I don't know if there is an opportunity in transit, it's kiss and ride, in schools it's kiss and go. And I'm just wondering if that can happen where the gear comes out, the driver parks the car, and then and the family gets down on the beach, and the driver joins them later.
Yeah.
Brian?
Through the mayor to the council and council, it's a good question, and staff are very familiar with the concept and are trying to make that happen. The complexity is, and I think it goes back to one of the other questions that was asked, is because you're going to have some cars parking there and some cars coming down the road towards the beach, how much traffic can you actually take with the pedestrian movement? So while we have developed a turnaround for certain cars, we do anticipate as we build out the plan that that's going to be, the number of people that can come down and do that turnaround is going to be very limited, either to, if it's not being used, we could let some cars down there, or it's going to be limited to those that need additional assistance. And it's just a function of, and anybody looking at the map will see moving a ton of cars down there, it's a very tight space. And that's one of the complexities with our beach is its entranceway is very unique in the sense that it's somewhat isolated to be able to come down there. So we will look at as best we can make that happen. But when you look at this, when you look at the map right now, and just based on the question we already had, just in concern about pedestrian safety, it's going to be very difficult to move a lot of cars down there. Our expectation is most cars will be stopping back at Lot A and parking and having to bring their stuff down the 400 meters to the beach.
Okay, thank you. Now into the body of the report. We prided ourselves in creating self-sustaining entities, and Nickel Beach was one of those that went from a cost to a break-even to carrying itself and its and even some of its peripheral costs, including capital. And so you allude to it in the report, and on this $1.3 million. I know that's just an estimate now; it could be lower, but I would still like to see us be including capital as a self-sustaining entity. And I know that we all are going to, that this first year is going to be a very interesting year, gathering data and see where it does. But I just don't want to take off the books that this is a self-sustaining entity, including capital. Do you have any problem with, and that surplus could be different in different years, but it seems to me that we've done other things, whether it's the marina or whether other, and we've done a debenture, and although this isn't going to be a debenture, we've repaid reserves, usually on a schedule of X amount of years. Could we certainly keep the self-sustaining entity here with not a fixed term, but term until it's paid back into our account?
Brian?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor and council, from a staff perspective, our goal is to continue this as a self-sustaining entity. And I think when anybody takes a look at some of the assumptions we had, where midweek there might be X number of users we identified, and then we planned for the certain number of weather days, etc. There is the opportunity to market this beach well and bring people down to the beach and be successful at this beach. And in the event that we do have the surplus that we do think can come in time, although I appreciate the councillor identifying this is going to be a real cultural change on this beach in the first year, and there's most likely going to be some change, I guess, in respect to that. Any surplus that is earned on that beach would go back to repay this fund over the next number of years. I just, right now, because of the change, it's very difficult with the lack of data to be able to give clarity on what that time frame is going to be. But the goal will be that over time, this the infrastructure reserve is repaid.
Great, well, that's good to hear, because I think the fact that if we get over this hump and get creative, that 1.3 or whatever it is will now be paid back. Thank you. Second point you alluded to was marketing. So, you know, at the end of the day, skeptics may be right that there'll be a percentage of people who came to Nickel Beach regularly that were paying the fee, and the addition of having to walk or carry their gear turns them off to the extent that they don't come back. I think obviously that's an unknown at this time, so that could reduce those 90% filled days 80% of the time in the summer. But the other way of tackling that is with a marketing program. And, you know, everybody's focused on the big number of the parking lots. But I would suggest we have a Crackerjack communications team led by our manager who's here. You know, the world discovered Port Colborne in COVID for the beach and filled that area where they all walked with their gear to the beach. So we know there's an element of people that will do it. Yes, that was when there wasn't anywhere else to go or a limited place to go, so those are realities. But at the end of the day, I think we need to have a promotional advertising campaign. I think it needs to be done at a certain time of year, certain days of the week, and with the whole story, whether it's driving them to the website to explain the whole thing, whether it's even radio in the GTHA, and if you add Western New York, you really have within a 2-hour drive 7.5 million people. And we're asking the marketing and staff to try and sell 200 spaces. And so I don't look at this as a dead end unachievable, but we've relied on people discovering us, coming, and word of mouth has made the rest follow. And it's worked with very low cost in terms of, or virtually no cost in terms of advertising. But to go into this new frontier and to be successful in year one, I do think we need a bigger, a smaller share of a bigger pie. And we need to get into that area. And I'm not going to set out some of the things that I've seen work elsewhere in the business I've been involved with, but that's for a later date. So I'm wondering if you could find a way to either put a targeted amount of dollars, which probably is not in the Nickel Beach budget cast last fall, but a way to get at, in a very repetitive way at the front end of the season to get people down here. Because I think that if we could get lots of people down here and a percentage of them might get turned off the first time, there'll be a percentage of them that will discover it for the first time and stay. I think it's all doable, but it's going to require a front-end effort, and it's going to cost some marketing dollars. So I don't know if you could speak to that tonight.
Brian?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor and council, staff's up to the challenge. We are looking at budgets where we can maybe go down somewhere and find some dollars somewhere else to make this happen. And I'm just thankful that our new manager of corporate communications has joined, and I'm sure that she didn't realize this was going to be such a challenging project after her second week here, but this will be one that I was a good conversation I had just the other day, and willing to take on the challenge.
Great. And then just finally, I would love to see us experiment with something. Like, I think when I was a bit of a skeptic, but had an asterisk behind it when we first started to change from letting everybody in, parking down by Rodney Street, in the field, all that kind of stuff. That, running a beach may be one of the riskiest businesses up there with restaurants, and certainly riskier than being a farmer. You can't buy crop insurance for the weather for beachgoers. And you've only got a finite bit of time, and you've only got really 12 peak weeks to do all this kind of stuff. And one of the ways to take risk out of the business is to do seasonal passes. And for some people that may seem like a high end. But I talked to Brian, just so council knows, I talked to Brian about this today. If we can somehow run kind of a beta test with upsetting the apple cart and the plan. So I would love to see in the neighborhood of 2% of the spaces be experimentally sold on a seasonal pass basis, unlimited weekday and weekend, in and around the $350 mark. And we may not want to limit it to spaces. You may want to limit it to how the inquiries go. But I'll leave that to staff, who's the expertise, who's been down there, to Blair. It's not something that I want to armchair quarterback or get into the weeds about. I trust the staff to look at that and I don't know if you need an endorsement from council, but I think you're not really risking the 2% of the spaces. If people don't show up, you sell them to somebody else. But it would be interesting to see if there is a market for a scarce resource that wants to do that. And if there is, we can either grow the price or grow a limited number of spaces and have the money up front, whether it rains or snows in July.
Thank you, Councillor. We can look at that as staff direction. Is that fine, Council? Added as staff direction with regards to that last comment. Brian?
Just through the mayor to yourself and the clerk, if we're going to charge a fee, and staff, and we appreciate the councillor coming, and I don't know if I should say, but it was a 2-hour whiteboarding session, I think, to get to that. But if to add that fee, do we need to amend it so we can add it to the bylaw? So can I take it as direction? It's just, I guess normally I don't ask a question to the clerk in a council meeting, but I guess as staff I'm asking a question. Can I take it as, how do I have to proceed?
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would propose that a report be brought back with the user fee amendment that's required to implement the fees. That's going to be coming in the next couple months. That could be included.
You could pass this tonight and then bring an amendment forward between now and April. You want to get going on it fairly quickly, Councillor?
Well, I guess that's why I chose a very small number to get this off the road. I mean, we're talking about 2% or less, which is 10 spaces. And if you don't sell it, you have a price there that doesn't do anything anyways.
That's right.
So, I mean, I think I would like to see that we do that so it can be incorporated in the planning stages.
So we're fine with having him doing an amendment that could come back for, let's say, the first meeting in April? Gives them time to look at this. Is that fine?
Through the mayor, to the mayor, I guess, on this.
Because we can pass these numbers tonight.
Staff is fine if council wanted to add that because if it's council, if we go to the appendices, we'll see the seasons pass. Right now, there's a seasons pass proposed for Monday to Thursday, and I believe Councillor Bruno is suggesting that we should have an unlimited pass, that you could come any day of the week and know where you're going to be parking. And I believe the councillor is asking right now, could we amend that appendix to allow for an unlimited pass at the price of $350?
You could. You can put that on the floor if you want.
And I guess that's...
You could call it a 7-day pass for $350.
And I think that's what the councillor is asking. Alternatively, as from staff, we are going to come back with another report to update the bylaw for parking. We could add it there too. And we're happy to take direction of council on it.
I prefer tonight because it's such a small amount. I really want to get that in the mix so that they can do the marketing this way. And is that, how do you feel about that, Mr. Bowles? I guess I should ask, because you're the one in charge of the whole thing. Is it workable for you that way?
Through the mayor to the council, we can work on it either way. If council is okay with us pre-marketing it before you approve it to be added to a bylaw, we can do that. If you want to amend this report and add the fees in, we can do that too.
Pardon?
Doesn't it need to be a motion?
Amended motion, yeah. You want to put that on as amendment?
Yes, thank you.
So the council is going to propose an amendment to what's been put on the floor, that we had a 7-day pass for $350 to be limited to 2% of the parking spaces. Correct? Councillor? Councillor Hoyle, you were the first seconder. Will you second that? Yes. Okay. So now we're dealing with the amendment. So I'm going to start on my left and work my way to the right on the amendment, because I still have a speaker's list on the original motion. Councillor Bodnar, any questions on this amendment? Hoyle? Okay. Elliott, questions? Yeah. On the amendment?
On the amendment, yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bowles. We're going to limit it to 2%. Exactly how many is 2% in parking spots?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, it's approximate, it's somewhere between 13 and 10 and 13 spots. It really depends on the final construction.
Okay. And the unlimited pass is in conjunction with the Monday to Thursday? Or scrap the Monday to Thursday and just go?
No, this would be an additional pass called a 7-day pass.
Yeah, so
You can
there's
have
going to
both.
be both.
Yeah.
Is it restricted to the purchaser, or can you pass the pass to anybody?
Mr. Bowles?
Well, can I, through the mayor, ask the councillor that put forward the recommendation, what his thoughts would be on that?
I would leave it as the way the $100 pass is, which is the car pass.
That's right.
Same way, no change.
Same rules.
So you can't pass it around.
It's the car.
Right.
Yes.
It goes with the license number and everything like that? Okay.
You all set?
Yeah.
Councillor Baggett? Beauregard?
Yeah, through your worship to Director Bowles. How do we decide who gets the pass? It will be first come, first serve?
Right?
Yeah, through the mayor, that is how staff would proceed with this.
So you better get your name in fast. Well, you live here. You have a free pass already. Councillor Aquilina? You're good? Okay, no further questions on the amendment. So you're voting on a 7-day pass for 2% of the parking spaces, which will leave it at 2% because that could be 10 or 13, as he said, for a $350 cost. All those in favor? Okay, no one's opposed. That's carried. Back to the main motion. I have Councillor Hoyle.
Through your worship, Councillor Bruno and Mr. Bowles, Director Bowles has answered like a lot of my questions that I had for tonight and answering many of this constituents. But I do have a few things. One is I'm glad to see about Lot C for accessibility. I think it's better to be paved than gravel, since gravel going in is the issue, I believe now, at the beginning, so pulling it all out and just paving it would be better. I still have concerns with the how bylaw or how we're going to deal with the residents that do not get the pass that live in the adjacent streets. I can just foresee people still parking there, and the homeowners won't be able to park in front of their home. So I still see that. So I don't know how the mechanism we can deal with that, because some people are not gonna get the pass in that area. There's a lot of elderly. And before, an idea for transferring between lots, just like when you go to resorts, electric vehicles, go-karts, big long ones, transfer them.
Golf carts.
Up and down, yeah.
Golf carts.
Just an idea. We have a golf cart maker down the block, so maybe that's something we can look into for transportation up and down. Thanks.
So, through the mayor to councillor and council, staff will take that as direction. If staff is interested in, or if council is interested in staff researching some electric ATVs or the like to move some people around, I think staff was very interested in that model too. There will be a cost, but it can have a huge benefit to people having to carry coolers and that in. And with respect to the parking in the neighborhood, we're taking those comments that we're receiving, and we look forward to working with the community safety division and bylaw to try to figure out how some of that model is going to work. And we'll be back to council shortly to debate how that model gets rolled out.
Councillor?
I think we're good.
Good, thank you. I have Councillor Elliott. Or sorry, I have Councillor Bagu, then Councillor Elliott. Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions. I think you might have answered one of them, but I know the Fowler told, I was with the Conservation Authority, we talked about it quite a bit at Morgan's Point, and probably what a lot of people don't know here, almost the whole north shore of Lake Erie is affected. There's people, example, Tennessee Avenue, they're not allowed to rake their beaches by the ministry. A lot of people don't know that don't live there. And only up to Morgan's Point, Fowler's toads around there also. And so that's just for information for the people watching. A couple questions. You got a forecast revenue of $428,000, 2023. What was the net for 2022?
Yeah, so the net for this year, before we had to bring the biologist in to try to work through some of this, so that kind of a one-time expense, was about $20,000. So there was a surplus on the beach before we did that, and our total revenue for the beach this year was $360 because we had HST built into the fees, and now we're proposing HST not be built into the fees. So that's kind of how that differential works.
Okay, I'm not really opposed to this proposal, I guess you'd call it. 1.3 million is quite a bit. I don't know if we could go whole hog for first year or just do partial the first year and see how it goes for the second year. But the other question that you talked about vehicles, it's a long way down the beach, and what I imagine is if some kid cuts their foot on a piece of glass, you're not going to make them walk all the way back to the parking lot. So with a Fowler toll issue, vehicles are allowed on the beach in emergency use. I guess I'm asking that question to you, Mr. Mayor.
Through the mayor to the council, I really appreciate that question. We haven't been asked that question yet, but that is correct. So we are working with the ministry to update, now that other cars won't be on the beach, but to update our operations manual, and it will allow, for example, if Public Works needs to go onto the beach, or the fire department needs to go on, or an ambulance, even our rec vehicle to be able to move activity. We have to pick up garbage and things like that to maintain the beach. So just for clarity, there will be very limited use of cars on it, but we will be able to assist and bring emergency vehicles if need be.
Councillor?
Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hoyle mentioned about the people in the neighborhood, like for example, Rodney Street. People live there. I live on Rodney Street. well, I don't, but if I did, and I have a visitor coming from St. Catharines to visit me during the beach, that person coming down to visit me in my house is going to be an issue with bylaw when they park in front of my house. And it's sort of like canal days where the residents had their passes, but people come to visit them. If they didn't have a pass, they're going to get ticketed or warned, I guess. But it will be an issue if we go about this without some more thought than we had during canal days. Is there any way that we could not build the Lot A for this year and just leave the other B and C and D?
Ryan?
Like,
what
would be the cost of that out of the $1.3 million?
Well, first, I guess, through the mayor to council, operationally, we would not recommend walking away from Lot A, because as we still work with our great partner in Valley, that lot is still having a lot of conversation because it's so close to their facilities. So we just want to make it clear, which we tried to in the report, there is still negotiating work going on there. So that lot is not a completed component, right? So that's one thing to consider. I think the other component to consider is if you don't do Lot A and you push out into other areas, i.e. there's a lot across the area, which is also not our property, but we did get permission to use it during the COVID experience. It's a hilled lot. People, I think, sometimes forget that it's kind of like almost like a 60-40 kind of component. So it's not perfectly set up for, but you can put some cars into that. So operationally, that lot, if people are still going to embrace the beach like we're hoping they will in this plan, is going to fill up very quickly. And then we're going to be spilling out either into the community or we're just going to have to be turning people away. There is no other option. Whereas when we used to run the beach and used to be able to park on the beach, provided the water level was down, there was a lot of option to kind of double park cars. I think Councillor Wells, who was a beach attendant several years ago, kind of explained how that used to work. So there was the opportunity always to add more capacity. Now that we're off the beach, there is nowhere to add extra capacity, and that's where we would really caution against removing the Lot A. I'm not the expert to know the exact dollar figure that we're assigning to Lot A. I don't know if we know we have a lot of fill coming in. I don't know if we've broken it out between the lots, and I don't know. I know we got the Public Works team that may or may not be able to answer that. We'll give them a second to confer.
Certainly. Steve?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Bagu. So Lot A is pegged at about $750,000 because there is, as Director Bowles mentioned, it is a sloped lot and it's going to require a lot of granular to be able to level the area.
Okay. Councillor? Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with the fees. I did look up Wasaga Beach parking today. What a coincidence. And it's $28.50 for parking, and I think we can offer a pretty good bang for the buck here. The amenities on the beach, I do have concern. We want to give them a quality visit on our beach. If we have Splash Town, that's great. But there's got to be some sort of confectionery or something where people can... Is that in the planning, or is that still in the thought process, or?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor, staff 100% want to bring that modeling out. You'll see in the appendix diagram where we show where there's a kind of a first aid and the washrooms. I think most councillors have seen some pictures of the washrooms. Those will all be set up there. The complexity is right now we don't have permission to put anything else on the site. So we're still working with the ministry. Should we get the ability to, staff would look forward to taking council's direction and moving forward to creating food amenities and that. But right now we don't have the location for it unless we give up more parking spaces, which then restricts people from coming to the beach. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword we're working with.
Councillor?
Okay, one last question, Mr. Mayor. how long would it take, I guess your best estimate, to pay off the $1.3 million?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to the council and council, I think I give you everything I got every day. I don't know if I have that number right now. It's not, we're gonna have to see how this year pans out, and then with council support, we'll work together to build out the business plan to kind of figure out what that timeline's gonna be. It will take some time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Bowles, with the model proposed here, will the staffing level change at all?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councilor and council. Right now, we're anticipating we may go down to beach students and replace that with bylaw enforcement. So there may be a switchover, but we don't see the net cost of staffing coming down, because while we're not doing the scan in and we're not doing some of the other components at the gate, we may actually even find ourselves with more work trying to make sure people park tightly in Lot A, because an efficient parking in Lot A will determine how many people can actually enjoy the beach on any weekday.
That was my thought when we were talking about the gravel and everything. How do you delineate the spaces, and you're gonna need parking lot attendants and all of them. Which brings me up to my next question. In the beach rates as posted, I'm talking about season pass, it says Nickel Beach lots A through C and Centennial Cedar Bay parking lot, subject to availability, no guarantee of a parking spot. So does that hold true and fast with seasonal pass and also the weekly pass? You're not guaranteed of a spot.
So, yeah, through the mayor to the councilor and council, that is correct. So when it comes to the participate pass and the visitor pass Monday to Thursday, that is our recommendation, that we can't guarantee a spot because you're going to come in and use the honk mobile in lots A through C. And there's going to be self-park, whereas before people pre-registered and came in, and we were able to pre-register and come in because we could control, we had exact measurements of how many people we could put on the beach, but now there will be some variation because of the gravel lot condition, and for this year we're suggesting that we do use honk. It will be a first come, first serve model in that beach. I think Councillor Bruno was suggesting that the ultimate pass, the 7-day-a-week pass, would have a guaranteed spot. Because if you're going to pay the $350, you should have a guarantee that you can find a spot, and that's what staff will be putting in place.
Okay. And further to that, sorry, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Bowles, does that require then somebody to, a lot attendant to be in the lot at all times to make sure that you have a pass to park in those spots?
Yeah, through the mayor to the council and council, we will have signage and we will have a fee system which will come back because we're going to be updating our parking bylaw, and that'll give us the ability to fine somebody should they not follow the posted signage. So we do believe it's going to be self-serve because there'll be a sign there that says these spots are reserved.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Bowles, speaking of fines, with the no parking in the neighborhood, we've got a variable rate through the week for parking. I'm assuming that the parking fines will exceed the parking rates for the beach?
Yeah. Through the mayor to the councilor and council, I'm looking at, yep, I'm getting confirmation that is how that's going to work. Thank you.
And will that be across the board no matter the day, just because the rates fluctuate? And if we're going to, sorry, go ahead.
Chief Lawson?
Sorry, through the mayor. We're just going to go with a fixed fee for whether it's Monday, Sunday, Saturday, whatever.
Okay.
So it's just easier for us to manage.
Because that was my first thought. If we were cheaper than the parking lot, I'll take the ticket, please, and I'll walk the extra 20 feet. So just as an overall comment, when I first got this, the report, I was just shaking my head. And $1.3 million for parking lots for a beach. And the option is do this, basically close the beach. So it's, you know, I had these two voices inside my head all weekend talking to me and arguing about it, and it's kind of like, what do you want to do? And as much as I hate the price, and I'd love to see it come in at much reduced, and repayment of it, if and when, at some period of time. This is one of the hardest decisions I've had to make in past years as well. There's a lot of people that look at that figure, residents, and go, that's a lot of money for a facility that I don't use, and my neighbor doesn't use, and my family doesn't use. And yet, it's part of the incentive to come to town as far as tourism goes. And I wouldn't even attempt to guess at how much revenue it generates for the businesses in town with the people that come. But there has to be a spin-off effect. And I'm still shaking my head about it, that we're at this point where we have to build parking at this expense for a beach because of a toad. And you can chase that around and around as much as you like. But I can't see closing the beach. That's the, I guess the ground for me is that we need to have it to draw people into town. It's fluctuating. You'll never know what your revenue is going to be until the end of the year because you're dependent on the weather. You know, and even when we had a conversation today, I was still kind of tossing it around, and I just don't see another way around it, other than the option that's presented, and there is no other option presented except we've got to do our own thing. The only thing that worries me outside of the construction costs of it is what's the maintenance cost going forward of the lots. We haven't, we haven't talked about that and figured that in. As far as gravel lots go, and I'll put this through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director of Public Works, how much maintenance on the lots will there be year over year? Can you even ballpark that?
Mr. Szpolski?
Yep, through your worship to Councillor Elliott. So typically with a stone, I'll refer to a stone roadway, what we do is we'll actually bring equipment through, we'll scarify the grounds to fluff up all the stone, and then we'll repack it, we'll add a little bit of stone if needed. So the majority of costs are within the materials themselves, being the granular that we would have to put back down. For a parking lot this size, we could be looking at $5,000 to $10,000 max, and I think that's even stretching it too to bring granular into site. So I think that would be a high level number to maintain those. I would suggest during winter control, they're not needed during the winter, so we would just leave them offline and actually close them for residents. So that's probably what the cost would be on an annual basis for the maintenance of them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll reserve the rest of the comments for later. I've really struggled with this. It's just something, when I see that cost and that number looking you straight in the eye, and it's like 1.3 million for a hope and a prayer to get people to come. Yeah, it's a difficult decision, so I'll wait for the rest of Council's comments.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Bonner, the Beauregard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll vote for this. There's no doubt about it. I don't think we have another option. And I really think that it will find its way as we go along. First year will be a learning process. Next year it'll get better, and then, people will tell us whether they want to come, and then we make a decision how we want to deal with it. One of my concerns is that, as I think Councillor Bruno, had said that people will be trying to figure out whether they actually want to park there when they get there. How far away are they? My problem is it's going to put pressure on Centennial Cedar Bay and the road ends like we had during COVID, because people are still going to come to take a look. If they decide to go look for someplace else, you know where they're going to go. And I know we've had good control over that since an initial rough start. I just want to be assured by staff that that hasn't been forgotten, because you know what I don't want to hear is, oh, we didn't think of that. I know you thought of it, and I know you're thinking of how you're going to handle it. I just want someone to say, Chief, that it's actually a a thought process that's going to be looked at. We'll have enough manpower to take care of it. If on that first weekend, we get blown out by people parking all over the place again.
Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through the mayor to councillor, talking with the director of finance, we are bringing on an extra bylaw officer for the 6 months, and he's under his bottom drawers found enough money, if required, to bring on another part-time. The road ends have been a focus for the last 2-3 years, and they will remain a focus along with Centennial Bay.
Councillor? Thanks. Great. Councillor Beauregard, then Councillor Bruno. Councillor Beauregard?
Yeah, through your worship, it is very frustrating that we find ourselves in this position. It's, as it's stated in the report, as Director Bowles wrote, residents have been utilizing the beach, driving on the beach since the advent of the automobile. So it's really frustrating. It comes at this time, and we get put in this almost like a handcuffed position where we're between a rock and a hard place. And similar to Councillor Bodner, I will be voting for this because the alternative is simply unacceptable. So, but in terms of questioning, similar to Councillor Hoyle and Councillor Bagu, I have concerns regarding the residents in that area in East Village regarding the Participate Pass. So what kind of strategies will we employ to make sure that those residents in the neighborhood do end up obtaining their Participate Pass?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to councillor and council. I think, and I think Councillor Bagu brought it up, that the decision to utilize the Participate Pass and then have, for example, honk at Canal Days was kind of a last-minute decision in the planning process, and here we are still 4 months out from beach season. So as we go forward, this is kind of step one of, I guess, that communication process to realize that there will need to be some change. And I think staff is willing to take any other suggestions. We just put forward that the residence pass is something used in beach communities to be able to make this happen. And I think, as council's correctly identified, the key will be to make sure people need to get one to set them up. Our customer service group has talked about being available at the market, but alternatively, should council direct it, we're even prepared to go door-to-door knocking if need be to be able to get people to sign up and get these passes.
I'm sure Jasmine may have something to add. You're talking about that and her expertise in communications. So I look forward to that. Anything else, Councillor?
Yeah. I think that I support definitely having a Participate Pass. I think that's the right way to go. In terms of just making sure people are aware, I would just recommend that we do go door to door. We have to go to them because there's a good chance that they're not going to come to us, and then we're going to hear about it. So we go to them, and the other alternative is maybe include signage. Just if you're a resident, get your Participate Pass and just put it in a couple locations where they're definitely going to see it at some point. Mm-hmm. So that would be my recommendation there. Another question, looking at the Appendix A of the report, the map, it appears that there's almost like a driveway entrance into the valet from there. Is that active?
Yeah, so through the mayor to the councillor and council, you will notice on the map, there's kind of like this little cutoff, like almost like a special entrance coming in to the parking lot that we would use. It's because of the facility that Valley has, there is a requirement to keep that access open at all points in times for emergency purposes. So we are, and this diagram is an early stage diagram trying to depict the second entrance that's going to be dedicated for the parking lot, and then there'll be a gate and dedicated entrance into the plant there.
Okay, so it would only be used for emergency purposes? We can't expect like a truck coming in at anything like that, really?
As far, it is their plant, sorry, through the mayor to the council, it is their plant, so if they decide to use it for other purposes, but generally in just past experience with running the beach in the last little bit, it's not a highly used area during our time.
And
Chief, just to answer, Chief, would that be primarily used for emergency purposes, that secondary gate?
Through you, the mayor, to my knowledge, that's strictly for our use, just to give us a different access depending on which ways the wind is blowing.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's right. So I'm sure when Councillor Baggy worked there, staff would have parked back there, correct?
Yes, your mayor, and that's only for emergency use.
Yeah, great, thank you. Good. Councillor Borger?
Yeah, and I also agree with Councillor Hoyle's remarks regarding a shuttle service of some sort. Well, I believe a shuttle service. I believe you mentioned golf carts or something of the like, but essentially something like that I would strongly support. And something I was just briefly looking at was there's an unutilized, at least in the diagram that I was looking at, unutilized lot on Rodney Street that's kind of between Davis and Mitchell there, like Rodney, and it's at that corner. Do you know if it is being used by valet, if they'd have interest in that being used as maybe in the future as a overflow parking?
Walls?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor and council, staff is trying to arrange so we can have as many additional spots for overflow parking as possible. We've seen it, you've all seen it on a hot day in the summertime. People want to come to Nickel Beach. And while we think this is going to be a huge change, we experienced, and I think Councillor Bruno mentioned, even during COVID, they're willing to park right up into the subdivision and walk in. So as best we can tie up the other areas for parking, staff is trying to bring that about. But at this point in time, that's not there, but it might be in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to pick up on two things that Councillor Elliott brought up, and one was to drill down through you to the chief a little more on that parking fine, because I think it's incredibly important that at the get-go, just like May 2-4 with provincial parks at the beginning of the season, that's got to be a priority to hard hit. You'll have the extra help. So what is the illegal parking fee? Because I know it's more than 30, but I want to know that it's more than 50 too.
Chief?
Through the mayor to councillor, off the top of my head, I believe it's somewhere between the $65 and $80.
Okay.
We can at any point designate that area as maybe a little steeper fine. We do have to be careful though, because AMPS is supposed to be non-punitive, so it's just to correct that action. So we can't go crazy, but I'm going to suggest it's 1.5 times minimum. And that would be where I would be suggesting we set it.
Councillor?
Great, thank you. The other point is, one of the things we talk about how much value it is to the citizens of Port Colborne to have that beach and why we're voting for this, and that Councillor Elliott mentioned, but it'd be hard to estimate, and it is hard to monetize what those other people who come to Port Colborne do with their spare time. But through you to Mr. Bowles. So when people use the Honk app, does the Honk app give us enough information to be able to use that as a database to contact people throughout the year to sell Port Colborne?
Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor, the audience view gives us where you pre-book gives us really good data. The honk does give us some ability to get some messaging out. It's not as great, but it's something and it's a start. I know you've mentioned to us several times about continuing to build the database, and staff are aware of that, and we will continue to work on the database to be able to let our customers know, our visitors know about the beach and the changes.
Yeah. If there was a way through you to Jasmine, and I know she's not prepared to wasn't prepared to answer tonight, but yeah, if all those folks that use, and I don't know if there's an option to get more information in the Honk app, but if we can gather that information and mine it going forward, it would be interesting for me, and I think council, to know, just in the past with the audience and Honk app, could we perhaps get a number in the future of how many unique addresses or hits there were?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor and council, staff will work on that and build out a stronger metric table. We brought in Honk 2 years ago at the marina, and we have some original data from there. We can use that as a table going into this year and get council's kind of thoughts on what that could look like, so you could see where people are coming from.
Yeah, and just the amount of unique plates, or that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Certainly. Yeah.
Actually, one or two.
One.
Just one, that's it?
No.
That's the limit.
Liking one?
If you would like, you want, I'll share with you. Yeah.
Today.
I haven't seen in the price, admission price, walk-ins.
Free.
Free for walk-ins?
Yeah, through the mayor to council and council, we have left it as free for walk-ins. We've looked at other beach models, and what staff's recommending here is that you pay for the parking, and then you can you walk in free instead of having to pay $10, which some places do, and then sometimes you have to pay $10 a person when you get up to the gate. Instead of having to put the cooler down, come up with another $10 or whatever, we tried to build it into the parking rate, keep things simple. Part of the strategic plan is try to streamline the system, and that's what our goal here is.
So building off of that it's free, could we promote that it's free for anybody that walks in, and out of town people that may be on cycling tours, ride your bike down, you get to come in for free, maybe try to eliminate some of the parking woes and whatnot.
Sure.
Some people from out of town, and we could promote it for tourism in town. If people are staying at an Airbnb or a hotel or anything close by and are cyclists, you don't have to book a parking spot to go to the beach. You can just ride your bike down and gain entrance for free. So it kind of is a win-win for everybody, especially for people that are in town for maybe a day or two that don't exactly know what they're going to do when they get here, and then they find out you got a great beach. I want to go to the beach, but how do I get there? So
100%.
Things like that.
Staff can take that as direction then, between you and Jasmine. Thanks, Jasmine. Okay. Just a couple comments, guys. I mean, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, if any of you that were around remember, you used to be able to drive on the beach, but you'd always park it near the entrance. There used to be a yellow fence, which was made out of old railway line, and you couldn't go past that, so you had to haul all your stuff and go down to the beach, further east. Then they opened it back up. So, that's been on and off for a long time. Growing up as a kid in the 70s, 24/7 you could drive on that beach. There was no gates, there was nothing. And cars have been going on that beach, I think, as Councillor said, when, for 100 years. I've got a picture in my office that goes way back, and it shows when the Algoma plant was being built, and there was still open water where the spit is, and you can see cars on the beach. That's an old photo in that office. So, but times are changing, and we have to change with it. And we have made changes over the past. Staff have made changes all along for many years. But let me just put this to you. Bay Beach, Fort Erie, Wasaga Beach, Sauble Beach, Port Stanley, Grand Bend, Ogden Dunes in Portage, Indiana, which is at the south end of Lake Michigan, Cedar Bay Beach. Cedar Bay Beach, you have to park and walk. Bay Beach, park and walk. I think you pay for parking and then you pay to get on the beach. Wasaga, Sauble, and Grand Bend, you used to be able to drive on it one time. Now you park and walk. Wasaga Beach, you can walk further than where we were even asking people to park. And their parking is, I don't know who looked it up, but that was pretty cheap because I paid way more than that last summer. Ogden Dunes, I don't assume anybody here has been there. Ogden Dunes is a very duney area where they actually have a train that comes in from Chicago that makes a stop there, but you're back, I don't know, maybe not quite a kilometer, but pretty close, where their welcoming center is, washrooms, change rooms, food, all that stuff, and you walk to the dunes, there's walkways and all that stuff, and you've got to carry all your stuff to the beach. This is not uncommon across North America today, guys. Florida, you can't take your cars on Daytona Beach anymore. They used to race on the beach. You got to park and walk, and you pay to park in Daytona Beach and other places. So, we're lucky we got to 2022 to park on Nickel Beach. It has been a luxury for the citizens and visitors to Port Colborne. So, we've got to pivot, and I'm sure our staff will do it right. I think we learned a huge lesson during COVID with regards to how popular Port Colborne became. But, I think we're going to be fine. I've been to the majority of all these beaches when you used to be able to get on them with your car, and you can't now, and they thrive. People go there. And I'm sure Nicole will find that out in Wasaga Beach. Back to a comment Councillor Elliott said about putting I can't remember the number, 1.3 million into the parking areas. It's a park. We make zero on any park in the city of Port Colborne. I'm sure the parking lots that we have at Lakeview Park were probably more money than 1.3 million if you look at it. Fully paved, curbed, storm sewer. But not everybody in Port Colborne goes to Lakeview Park. So, we can say that about all our park system. Park systems aren't designed to make money for the city. Some years Nickel Beach has made gobs of money, some years it's lost gobs of money. Hopefully it breaks even. That's what you hope. At least it has some type of income coming into the city, and it offers something for not only our citizens, but our visitors and tourists that come into the city of Port Colborne. Cedar Bay Park, we've got to maintain a parking lot there. We may have to make that bigger at some point for the people that use it, whether they're local or out of town. So those things evolve. We spend lots of money on parks where, we really don't talk about it too much here. But there's a lot of money spent in parks that your return is zero. And that's the reason for it. It's not there to make money. So I hopefully council that are having an issue with this, put that into perspective. It is part of our parks and recreation system. So thank you. And seeing no further questions, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you, council. 8.2. Is the Municipal Modernization Program amending agreements. The recommendation is that Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, Economic Development and Tourism Division Report 2023-33 be received. The Council approved the amending agreements between the City of Port Colborne and the provincial government for funding for the Municipal Modernization Program. Attached. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 8.2. That's it. No? 8.2. That's what's in my information here.
You've got to move down to 60.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, no. It's something we're trying on 60. Our apologies.
Ah, you've...
Sorry.
You've got 8.2 in my notes, and you've got 16.2 on our screen. So, okay, let's fix that, please, staff.
Yes.
Okay. It's not 8.2, although it says here it's 8.2. It's 16.2. Yeah, Strategic Priorities Infrastructure Fund Transfer Payment Agreement And the recommendation is the Chief Administrative Officer, Economic Development and Tourism Services Division Report 2023-28 be received. The mayor and acting clerk be authorized to execute an agreement with His Majesty the King in the right of the province of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure for the Strategic Priorities Infrastructure Fund, that the bylaw to authorize entering into the agreement be approved. I have Councillors Elliott and Baggy moving that, and Councillor Elliott, you're the only one to ask for a question, so Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I did see him earlier standing there. I had a conversation with
Mr. Higginbotham.
With I got to get it right. Higginbotham. Greg. Yes? Good. Greg?
Greg.
Earlier, just to explain where the funds are going at the BIA meeting last week, there was concern about rumors that were going around about there's going to be some work done on West Street, but nobody knew exactly where and how and why. So I asked him if he could speak to this, just to put it out there so everybody knows what's going on.
Greg, go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Elliott. Regarding the West Street components of the Strategic Priorities Infrastructure Fund project, and that's listed in the report as being streetscaping, landscaping, some enhancements to West Street, as well as wayfinding. Those components will combine with another project that we've called West Street Renewal. This was presented to Council last year at the March 22nd, 2022 Council meeting to indicate that the city was successful in receiving funds from OMAFRA's RED program, the Rural Economic Development Program. So this new funding will consolidate with that existing funding. And we have not yet, that's why there are very few details in the report. We have not yet finalized any plans. Staff have had meetings where we've discussed some preliminary ideas and preliminary plans for West Street, but now that this new funding is being announced, we will consolidate both of those projects under West Street Renewal, and we have every intention to take the consultation process to the members of the Downtown Port Colborne BIA, as well as businesses located on West Street.
Perfect, thank you. Just to clear up any misconceptions on what was going on, if we as the city were just going to go in and create projects without any input from the Downtown BIA, I think there was some concern, so I would think that they would look forward to those talks and getting some renewal on West Street done. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, Council.
Mr. Mayor, can you do that vote again, please? I missed the vote. Can you just do
Oh, you want the vote? Sorry. You all set now?
Yeah.
All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. There are no motions this evening. Is there any notices of motion? Thank you. We have minutes of boards and committees. We have 19, 1, 2, and 3. 3 sets, Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board, the Port Colborne Library Board, and the Social Determinants of Health Advisory Committee. I'll move these in block. If I could have Councillors Aquilino and Beauregard move these. Any question to any of these minutes? All in favor? That's carried. There are 2 recommendations coming out of the boards and committees. And this is actually the, I'll have to do these separately because it is 2 separate lists. The, sorry, there's one here. The first one is the Downtown BIA. These are the appointments. Jesse Bowles, Norbert Giger, Taylor Minlieff, Morgan Adams, Ed Cleveland, Rosemary Poisson, Larry Beverly, Anna Marie Crignali, and Harry Hamilton. Is there any, if I could have Councillors Bodner and Hoyle move that. Any questions on this? All in favor? It's carried. The second one is for the Main Street BIA. The appointments to that board are Nikki Lumsden, Simon Hossain, Natalie Torner, Kim Danch, and Jackie Vizot. If I could have Councillors Elliott and Bruno move that. All in favor? I assume there's no questions. What do you think there would be? Next is bylaws. We have bylaws 21-1, 21-2, 21-3, and 21-4. If I could have Councillors Baggio, Beauregard move those. Any questions on any of the bylaws? All in favor? That's carried. We do have 3 confidential items. We will be moving into camera. I have to give you a memo, Councillor, on keeping the phones quiet. We are going into in camera, so we won't be coming back out onto the WeeStream. So we thank everybody for watching this evening. And at this time, if I could have Councillors Bodnar and Aquilina move. The council do now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. 21-1 minutes of the closed session portion of the October 11, November 15th, November 23rd, November 29th, December 1st, December 12th, 2022 council meetings. 21.2 minutes of the closed session portion of the January 10th, February 7th, and February 14th, 2023 council meetings. And item 21.3, Chief Administrative Office Report 2023-04 concerning King Street property pursuant to Municipal Act subsections 2392CA, proposed or pending acquisition disposition of land. Is that correct?
That's
No.
from last meeting.
I knew that as soon as I started reading that. I'm like, no. This is. Do you have it on yours? There it is. Is Corporate Services Department Human Resources Report 2023-04, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations. Questions, council? All those in favor? That's carried. We will now move into closed session. Again, thank you for watching. That adjourns this portion.